Hello and welcome everyone. This is Professor Siddharth Surana. I hope you guys are doing good. और मैं तो हमेशा मस्त ही रहता हूँ. So today on the auspicious occasion of Holi, as a holy gift, I bring before you something that you have all been waiting for all this while. Yes, we are here with your MCQ Season 2. Major part of the introduction of these MCQ lectures I already covered when I did Season 1. Approximately how many episodes, what duration. Majorly it is going to be similar to last time around only, and therefore without wasting much time in the introduction, we will directly go to the questions. Just about 3-4 points I wish to tell you, and we will directly go to the questions of our season 2, directly the first chapter. First point, sir, main question, what is the difference between last season and this season? Sir, some questions are removed. A big chapter, dividend distribution tax, income distribution tax, has been removed from the portion. And because of the removal of DDT related, all the questions are removed. So, from the main chapter DDT, from the chapter special rates of tax, from the chapter dividend and bonus stripping, whatever questions were with respect to exempt dividend income, they are all removed. Last time's book had about 1560, 70 some questions. So, round figure we said about 1600 questions are there in the book. Because of DDT, from the textbook about 7070 questions are removed. So the number comes to 1500, but the new book contains about 1650 questions. In other words, we have got 150 new MCQs, which also includes all the complicated MCQs which were introduced in the November 2020 RTP by ICAI. May 21 RTP has been just recently released, so those MCQs are not covered, but they will be by way of a separate lecture recorded. In the book they are not covered. Separate lecture will be recorded and that will be uploaded within the same playlist of this MCQ. So one difference is 150 new questions. Second, sir, majority language of communication is going to be English over here. We are not going to be using much Hindi. Yes, थोड़ी हिंदी होगी, 5-10% हिंदी यूज करेंगे. ऐसा नहीं है कि पूरा का पूरा इंग्लिश में होगा, थोड़ा सा हिंदी होगा, लेकिन बहुत लिमिटेड होगा. Majorly we will be doing in English, so that everybody understands, and in any case exams have to be written in English only anyways. Okay. Thirdly, I hope that by now you have already watched the revision cum amendment lecture. Sir, why was the delay in this season 2 so much? Sir, because the faculty was waiting for students to complete watching revision cum amendment lecture. In the last season, at the commencement of every chapter, I used to do the introduction and virtually, almost explain the chapter and then do the sums. This time I am not going to do that. I will directly do the questions, because this time the revision lectures have been done in more detail. So last time we used to finish revision in about 3-4 hours, but this time we have made 7 episodes total amounting to about 8-10 hours, and thus we will not be spending any time on revision. We will directly do the question. It is necessary that you finish watching those revision cum amendment lecture, and sir, that is the reason the season 2 was delayed, because I was waiting for people to complete that first. So I hope you have watched those lectures already. I also hope that you have received this. You have already purchased the MCQ textbook from Coppergate. If you have not purchased, you can see the link of the website and the contact number from where you can purchase the hard copy of the textbook, and so that you are comfortable as and when we are doing our sums. And lastly, for those students who have queries about the handwritten book, sir, we are working very hard and trying to work as fast as we can without compromising quality. In quality, there is not going to be 1% compromise also, and without quality compromise, how fast we can do, we are trying to do it. We will try our level best, then we can make it available by the middle of April, and if not available by the middle of April, definitely before May 21, because the exams are in the last week of May. Before your exams, definitely your book will be, the handwritten book will be available in the market. And anyways, your 1.5 day revision is going to become very smooth, easy and convenient with your handwritten book available with you. So with this introduction, let us, without wasting any time, let us continue. I hope the points are clear. Let's go to our MCQ book. This is your new book for season number 2, drafted for May 21, November 21 attempt. In fact, for the common topics of CA final and CA inter, like the heads of income part, like the residential status part, those lectures can also be watched if you are a student of CA Inter, they are going to be very useful for you also. So if you are a CA intermediate student, this MCQ season is very much applicable for you also. Apart from that, I hope, and by the way, if you are watching it on YouTube, I hope you have subscribed. If you want amendment summary or anything like that, it will be available on the Telegram channel. I have a couple of pages on Facebook as well, if you can visit them. Physical lectures for the time being. In Mumbai, these three locations, though they are currently shut down, but I am catering to these students through digital mode. And plus, outside Mumbai, recently I have taken my one full physical batch in Kerala after 1 year, and Ahmedabad also very soon we are starting the lectures, whether physical or digital, but we are going to be doing our lectures. All our lectures are available in 2 language variants except these MCQs. Everything else, in fact the amendment revision lectures also 7 episodes in both languages we have uploaded. So we have separate lectures in 100% English for South Indian students, and rest of India के लिए हिंदी इंग्लिश मिक्स वाले lectures already available है. लेकिन क्योंकि MCQ में मैं 15 एपिसोड 2 लैंग्वेज में नहीं बना सकता हूँ, एंड इसलिए मेजर लैंग्वेज इन दिस इज गोइंग टू बी English only. Any video lecture you want, full course, crash course, we are giving our crash course for the betterment of student at a ridiculous price of 2,500 rupees all inclusive, except the textbook which you are anyways buying, the textbook and the MCQ book. 2,500 we are giving you the fast track, and any student studying for the second time, that is gold. I am telling you, that is gold. About 80-90 hours I have finished the full subject in such a manner that any student learning for the second time, it is going to be superb. For that I strongly recommend, I am very bad at selling, but I strongly recommend that you should take the crash course if you want to study for the second time. Let us go to our first chapter, introduction. Yes, of course there are a lot of questions now. See, if I am telling you that 115 new questions are there, that means 1500 existing questions are also there, but the questions as modified for assessment year 21-22, which is applicable for May 21 and November 21, the modified version of the question will be there. And as you are aware, our book covers just about everything. So sometimes there are some small topics related to AOP or anything which may not be covered in the regular version of lectures because they are too small to convert into a chapter, but our MCQ lectures will cover those also. So these lectures are very nicely going to even supplement your main chapter study, and therefore it is strongly recommended that you all watch these lectures. First question, let's begin. The term person in income tax includes artificial judicial person also, AOP, BOI, local authority, and therefore all of the above. What are the exceptions to the rule that income of the previous year will be assessed in the assessment? Obviously income you earn in previous year, but tax you pay in assessment year. But sometimes to protect the interest of the revenue, we take tax in the previous year itself. For example, if you are a non-resident, you are doing shipping business, you are likely to receive your income and leave. Person living in India, person likely to transfer property to avoid tax, then later recovery is going to be difficult, and therefore for all of these cases we are going to recover the taxes within the previous year itself. Mr. Malya, non-resident, no, now he is in non-resident now, 69 years, senior citizen, will get basic exemption limit up to dash under the old regime and dash under the new taxation regime. See, first of all, we know that in new taxation regime, the basic exemption is 250 for everyone. The benefit of senior citizen and very senior citizen is lost. It is going to be 250 for everyone. And therefore, these two options definitely are not going to work because they have given 3 lakh in the new regime. In the new regime, it is not going to be 3 lakh or 5 lakh for anyone. It will be 250. So, we are left with A and B. Old regime, it is going to be 250 or 3 lakh because he is senior citizen. This question arises, but open your eyes and very clearly check. He is a non-resident, and once you are a non-resident, you never get higher basic exemption limit in old regime, and in new regime there is no high basic exemption. You have got the basic exemption is 250 for everyone. Surprisingly, normally the new taxation regime sections 115BAA and BAB for domestic companies mention domestic only. BAD for cooperative society mentions resident cooperative society, but surprisingly BAC, which is introduced for individual HUF, does not mention the residential status, and consequently non-resident also gets covered. State whether true or false. A resident individual's 60th birthday falls on 1/4/21 would be treated as senior citizen for the previous year 2021. So full year non-senior citizen, but first day of assessment year senior citizen. And as per CBDT circular, even if your 60th or 80th birthday falls on first day of the assessment year for the entire previous year, we consider you senior citizen. And being a resident, yes, he is going to be treated as senior citizen for the year. Yes, he will be treated as a senior citizen. Marginal relief is to be added. When do we add marginal relief? First step, we calculate basic tax. Then rebate if applicable. Then we add surcharge, and from surcharge we subtract marginal relief. Last we add HEC, that means basic plus surcharge, and then we come to marginal relief. So after adding surcharge and HEC, no, after adding surcharge to basic tax, not before surcharge, and obviously not from NTTI. Marginal relief will be subtracted after adding surcharge. Rates of income tax are mentioned where? Income Tax Act, yes. Chapter 12 special rates, 12A like NRI taxation, there are rates of income tax. But the annual slabs are given in the Finance Act, and consequently both under the Income Tax Act as well as the Annual Finance Act, both places we will get our tax rate. Where total income of artificial juridical person is 3,10,000, what is going to be the income tax payable? Basic tax and HEC. 3,10,000. First of all, AJP does not have any new regime. So as per old regime, if we go by slabs, first 2,50,000, the tax is going to be 0. From 250 to 310, I think 60,000 into 5% will give us 3,000 rupees without adding HEC. Sometimes if you want to save your time, you can use your brain. If basic tax is 3,000, automatically these three become wrong. And anyways, if you add 4%, your 120 only will be your answer. Accordingly, you can choose your answer as A. HUF will be resident in India only if, for HUF, we cannot check physical presence, and therefore we will check control and management. Wholly in India, then also resident, and partly in India, partly outside India, then also resident. Only if it is wholly outside India, it will be non-resident. So control and management, wholly or partly in India. For HUF to be ordinarily resident in India, conditions have to be satisfied. We see only individual and HUF has this bifurcation of ROR, RNOR. बाकी असेसिस में रेसिडेंट या नॉन रेसिडेंट होता है, खाली इंडिविजुअल HUF में रेसिडेंट इज फर्दर क्लासिफाइड इनटू ROR, RNOR. फॉर इंडिविजुअल वी हैव टू एडिशनल कंडीशन. और HUF में ROR, RNOR कब होता है? इन HUF if the कर्ता fulfills the two additional conditions, 730 days in last 7 years and resident in at least 2 out of last 10 years. If the karta fulfills the additional condition, then the HUF will become ROR. So in case of HUF, we have to see karta. Whether income from fisheries is an agriculture income? No, fisheries is not agriculture because you have not performed operation, and therefore income from fisheries is not an agriculture income. Question 11. State whether true or false income from sapling or seedling grown in a nursery is not agriculture income. Now, if you go and read the definition of agriculture income in section 2, there is an explanation which clarifies that income from sapling and seedling grown in a nursery is agriculture. And what have they asked? Not. So, therefore, it becomes false. Understand what can happen here. If they remove the word not and they ask is an agriculture income, then true will be your answer. So you have to be very clear about what is the question. Not, therefore the statement is false. Which of the following income is exempt from tax? Exemption. See, agriculture we know is exempt. Amount received by a member from income of HUF because HUF already paid tax. So obviously if B and C both are right, then all of the above will only be correct, even if you don't have knowledge about this. But let me give you knowledge about this. In the Bhopal gas tragedy, it was announced as there was compensation announced, and government had notified that that is going to be exempt from tax, and consequently all of the above. Mr. Saif has rented out his agriculture land to Mr. Taimur, which is used by Mr. Taimur for agricultural purposes, and Saif received 3,10,000 as rent from Taimur. This 3,10,000 is taxable under which head? If I go and tell you the definition of agriculture income or the exemption given in 10.1, not the definition but the exemption, it says rent or revenue from land in India used for agricultural purposes. Rent or revenue. So the person who is doing agriculture, that revenue from agriculture is agriculture income exempt. And if your land is let out to another person and you are earning rent and that tenant is using that land for agricultural purposes, then your rental income also is treated as agriculture, and that is also going to be exempt. The statement is rent or revenue from land in India used for agricultural purposes. So, revenue of the farmer. But if the landlord is someone else, even the rent of the landlord, it is possible that you are doing on your own land. Then there will be only revenue. There cannot be rent on your own land. But if I am the owner of the land, I give it to you on rent and you do agriculture, your agriculture and my rent both will be exempt. Clear? Excellent. Red Label Limited is a company engaged in tea business. Kishore, one of the shareholders of Red Label Limited, received a dividend of 90,000 from such company. Out of this 90, how much is agriculture income? And income can be classified under agriculture only if you have performed certain operations on the land. If you have not performed, see, questions like these will be helping CA inter students also. If you have not performed the basic operations on the land, then there is going to be no agriculture component out. That the tea business, yes, we have breakup of 60% agriculture, 40% business, but the dividend is return on investment and consequently it is not agriculture. Till last year, it was still exempt because of DDT, but now this is going to be taxable for the receiver, Mr. Kishore. Which of the following head of income is exempt for trade union, like employee unions, any of these places where employees form a union or a trade union? Their business income is taxable, everything else is exempt. What is the rule for trade union? Business income taxable, everything else exempt. So, house, property, capital gain, other sources, all of the above, everything is going to be exempt. Concept of partial integration of agriculture income with non-agriculture income is applicable to. What is partial integration? Simple. Listen. If you have got huge agricultural income, you still don't pay tax. So what we will do is, your non-agricultural income, which is your taxable income, we will send it to higher bracket. We will assume that your lower brackets of 0%, 5%, 10%, that space is utilized by your agriculture income. Though we are not taking tax on it, but we will assume that those slabs are exhausted. Otherwise, what will happen? Supposingly, I have got 10 lakh agriculture and 3 lakh rupees non-agriculture. So, 10 lakh is exempt income. I am not paying any tax on that. And then when I pay tax on 3 lakh, again I take first 250 basic exemption. So, government is saying that somewhere it is not fair that you are taking a huge amount exempt already and then later again you are taking slab benefit. So, in other words, that 10 lakh will occupy your slabs 5%, 10%, and that 3 lakh which is taxable. By the way, when it is occupying slab, we will not take tax. We will just say that the slab was exhausted by your non-agricultural, by your agricultural income, and thus your non-agricultural income will be sent to a higher bracket of tax. That is known as the scheme of partial integration, and obviously it can be applicable to assessees who have slab rate of tax, which is individual, HUF, AOP, BOI and artificial juridical person, and therefore the concept of partial integration will be applicable to these income. Mr. Danny Dengzongpa, born and brought up in Sikkim, had a net profit of 2 lakh from business located in Sikkim and interest of 55,000 on securities bonds issued by government of Rajasthan. Discuss the taxability. Any person from the state of Sikkim will get a special benefit in income tax. Therefore, this was introduced by Finance Minister Mr. Chidambaram way back in 2008 to 2009. Too old now. But there was a provision where he said, if you are from the state of Sikkim, listen to the provision carefully. So that will explain the answer also. If you are from the state of Sikkim, within the state of Sikkim, you earn anything, it will be exempt. Anything will be exempt. And outside Sikkim, income from securities like dividend, interest on bonds, all that is going to be exempt. Let me repeat the provision. Within Sikkim, everything exempt. Outside Sikkim, income from securities like interest and dividend will be exempt. And thus, if we have understood the provision, then let's see what is going to be the treatment of Mr. Dengzongpa. 2 lakh is from Sikkim, therefore exempt, and 55 is interest, therefore also exempt, and accordingly the entire income is going to be exempt. Which of the following income would be exempt in the hands of Sikkim is individual? Now that I already discussed. Income from any source in the state of Sikkim is exempt, and dividend and interest on securities also exempt. Accordingly, everything is going to be exempt. Mr. Lalit, non-resident, age 89 years, having net taxable total income of 4 lakh. What is going to be his basic tax? Let's be clear. Let's be clear. The main mistake that you will make is, if you assume that he is 89 years and therefore super senior citizen and say first 5 lakh no tax and choose this answer, then this is your main possible mistake. Your answer is going to be wrong because he is a non-resident and thus always 250. Sir, what if he goes to new regime? Let me be clear about one more thing. Any person having income up to rupees 5 lakh, it does not make any difference whether old regime or new regime, because first 250 is exempt in old as well as new, and for non-resident it is going to be 250 only. First 250 is exempt and then the remaining is going to be taxable at 5% till 5 lakh, 250 to 5 lakh, 5% old and new regime till 5 lakh it is same, and after 15 lakh also 30% same. The difference lies between 5 lakh and 15 lakh, wherein new taxation regime you save a total of about 75,000 rupees, as we have discussed in our revision cum amendment lecture. Accordingly, first 250 no tax and the remaining 1 lakh 50, whether you apply old or new, it is going to be 7,500 rupees. Your only possible mistake is if you take basic exemption of 5 lakh. Mr. Madhav this time is a resident, age 79 years, and he has NTTI of 3,20,000 after taking certain deduction under chapter 6. This line is very necessary and important. This will make you understand that if he has taken certain deduction, it means that Mr. Madhav falls in the old regime. He has taken deduction, and in the old regime, if you are resident 79 years, then up to 3 lakh your tax is going to be 0. And for the balance 20,000, now listen, had it been the new regime, then we would have given 250. But why are we doing old regime? Because he has taken chapter 6. And then if he has taken chapter 6 and he goes in old regime, he is a resident senior citizen. 79 falls in 3 lakh. If it was 80, then he will go in 5 lakh. So first 3 lakh 0 and balance 20,000 will be taxable at a rate of 5%, accordingly giving us a basic tax of 1,000 rupees. 1,000 rupees is going to be basic tax. Are you following? So resident senior citizen, first 3 lakh because old regime. But the question is not tax. Question is what will be his rebate. Will he get rebate? Resident individual income up to 5 lakh. Resident individual income up to 5 lakh. Actual tax or 12,500, whichever is lower. If you choose 12,500, wrong. If you choose 0, you are again wrong because he is resident. If this was non-resident, then answer will be 0. You definitely have this possibility of going wrong if you give basic. See how I have created my options. This is the maximum limit. This is if you assume that there is no rebate, then you can make this mistake. If you give basic exemption of 250, then you will get 70,000 into 5%, 3,500. But that is also wrong. Correct answer is 1,000 because actual tax or 12,500, whichever is lower, actual tax is only 1,000. All income of local authority is exempt except profits and gains of business or profession. PGBP is going to be taxable, everything else is going to be exempt. Expression local authority, see, depends. India is a big country, so some places, city like Mumbai, we have municipal corporation, some places it is a panchayat board, port trust, and all of them, location by location in India, are going to become your local authority by whatever municipality, etc., whatever name you call them. Tax rate applicable to local authority is going to be a flat rate of 30%. It is same as partnership firm, flat rate of 30%, and after 1 crore, 12% surcharge, only one rate of surcharge. Whether true or false, remuneration received on account of personal qualification and exercise of individual exertion is assessable as income of HUF. Is it so? So, if I am doing some personal, my related work, it cannot be taxable as income of the HUF, and accordingly the statement is false. Bhel Limited is a shoemaking company. It acquired knife worth rupees 15,000. Is it capital or? First of all, in income tax, there is no concept of deferred revenue expenditure. If it is a shoemaking company, obviously the knife will be to give shape to the shoe. It becomes a case of plant and machinery. Whatever be the cost, it is going to be a capital expenditure. Salary to proprietor is dash deduction in case of sole proprietorship. Allowed or not allowed? Salary to in firm there is a 40B limit, but in proprietorship it is not going to be allowed as a deduction. Tax will be levied on a taxpayer on the basis of what? Income, obviously. Legal status, individual or HUF, company or firm, obviously, and rates. That means all these factors are relevant in deciding your tax. Dash incorporated outside India are treated as companies. India defines firm, company, LLP, AOP, everyone separately. But there are so many countries in the world where there is a concept called body corporate, and that country contains that definition of body corporate in most countries contain firm, LLP, AOP, everything. So outside India, if you are recognized as a body corporate, then in India you will be assessable as companies, and therefore you are going to be covered. Mr. Paresh is a member of AOP and AOP has paid tax at MMR. Mr. Paresh received his share of income from AOP. What will be the treatment of his share of income? If the AOP has paid tax at MMR, then in that case, the income of the member is going to be exempt. Rebate under section 87A is available up to, so here basically they are asking you the maximum limit, which is now 12,500. Flat rate of 30% is applicable on which of the incomes? Lotteries, yes. Horse races, yes. Card game, yes. And therefore, all of the above. Rebate under 87 is available when? What are the conditions? Resident individual net income up to, exact also covered, rupees 5 lakh. Net income up to 5 lakh, you will get rebate. State whether true or false HUF is a separate and distinct entity and will be assessed separately. Of course, we know HUF is separately paying tax, and in fact, once HUF is paying tax, then member is not required to pay tax. Section 87A rebate is available to resident individual income up to 5 lakh. First is correct. Automatically, HUF is not eligible, non-resident not. So, all of them are not eligible, only resident individual. Receipt by an individual as member of HUF out of family income is, obviously it is going to be exempt, and the reason is that the HUF has already paid tax. In case of an individual having NTTI of 50 lakh, exact, and this is where students go wrong, even the brightest student, this following few questions are going to resolve that issue of surcharge where a lot of students go wrong. At exact 50 lakh, remember, there is not going to be any surcharge. At exact 5 lakh, rebate comes, but exact 50 lakh surcharge does not come. Only when it is greater than, it will come. Whether you are a non-resident, that is not going to make any difference. And even if you are a senior citizen, that is also not going to make any difference. As far as the levy of surcharge is concerned, your only criteria is income. Residential status and being a senior citizen or not is never relevant when it comes to levy of surcharge. Only the amount of income till exact 50 lakh, whether you are normal individual, non-resident individual or senior citizen, it is going to be 0. Once it becomes greater than 50 lakh, up to 1 crore, it is 10%. But once again, when it is greater than 1 crore, it will become 15. So at exact 1 crore, in case of individual having NTTI of exact 1 crore, it is going to be 15. Let me give you one more clarification. These rates of surcharge for individual are same, whether they go in old or that new regime of 115 BEC. Only difference being that once we go to new regime, the NTTI that will be computed will be after foregoing the deduction. तो एक वो लिस्ट है ना 20 डिडक्शन जो अवेलेबल नहीं रहता है. अगर आपको नया वाला रेजिम चाहिए तो आपको ये छोड़ना पड़ेगा, ये भी छोड़ना पड़ेगा. वो सब 20 पॉइंट जो है, जो हमारे अमेंडमेंट कम रिवीजन लेक्चर के अंदर डिस्कस किया है, वो 20 पॉइंट आपको छोड़ना पड़ेगा. तो अगर आप वो टैक्स बेनिफिट छोड़ने के बाद में जो एनटीटीआई होता है, आफ्टर फोरगोइंग द टैक्स बेनिफिट, द एनटीटीआई दैट यू कंप्यूट, ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ दैट अमाउंट वी विल बी applying, but the rates are same. So up to 50 lakh nothing, after 50 lakh 10%, after 1 crore 15, after 1 crore 15, this is wrong, my bad. After 1 crore it is 15, but if it is equal to 1 crore, then it is going to be still 10. Greater than 1 crore will make it 15, greater than 2 crore will make it 20, greater than 5 crore will make it 37. And therefore when it is equal to 1 crore, that 50 lakh surcharge is going to get attracted, not the 1 crore surcharge. So it is going to be 10%. And once again, whether you are non-resident or whether you are senior citizen, greater than 50 lakh 10% till exact 1 crore. Greater than 1 crore, individual surcharge is applicable at 15% when it is greater than 1 crore but up to 2 crore. In case of an HUF created 65 years ago, the basic exemption is going to be what? 65 years ago. $65 years ago, like a total, now see, depend on whether you are a North Indian or a South Indian. North students, I say Popat Gadeda Pagal, and South Indians, I say Mandan Pottan Durantam. Depends from wherever you are. Don't fall for this trap, not track. Doesn't matter, basic exemption is going to be 2,50,000 always. What is the rate of cess? 4%. Question number 45. There was a little confusion in last year. So you ignored what we discussed. You know that thing you ignored. There was a little doubt which was asked, and now I will clarify. First, let's understand what are these questions 45 and 46. Mr. Harry and Mr. Sujoy are resident and Indian citizens. They are citizens of India. Have been appointed as senior officials of country A embassy and country B embassy. Every country has an embassy in India. So if you want, visa or you have any problem, there is US consulate, you have Singapore embassy, and New Zealand embassy, you have all the embassies, and Mr. Harry is working in the embassy of country A and Mr. Sujoy is working. So basically they are Indian but employees of that embassy. That means basically they are getting their salary from that foreign government. And they are employed since October 2020. Harry and Sujoy are subjects of country A and country B respectively. Subject means they are basically working as an employee of that government and are not engaged in any other business or profession in India. Remuneration received by Indian officials working in embassy in country A is exempt. Indian officials, country A it is exempt, but in country B it is taxable. So just like, let's assume country A is assume Singapore, country B is New Zealand. Harry is working for Singapore embassy and Sujoy is working for New Zealand embassy. Both of them are working in India but as employees of that government. And similarly, there is an Indian embassy in Singapore and there is an Indian embassy in New Zealand also. And over there will be employees of Indian government working. In country A, that country does not levy tax on those Indian government employees, but in country B, it is taxable. If we continue our assumption, country A is Singapore. So in Singapore, in Indian embassy, whoever is working and earning over there, but Singapore does not take tax, but country B, New Zealand is taking tax from people working in Indian embassy. The tax treatment of remuneration received by Mr. Harry and Sujoy, which obviously they are working currently in India from embassy of country A and country B respectively in India, is going to be what? Now listen carefully. In India, we have got embassy of country A, country B, where Mr. Harry and Mr. Sujoy are working. And in country A and country B, there are people working who are employees of Indian government. They are working over there as employee of Indian government. Country A does not take tax, but country B takes tax. Now, as per rule is very simple. If you do not take tax from our people, then we will not take tax from your people. And if you take tax from our people, then we will also take tax from your people. So, if that country exempts income of Indian embassy employees, then our India will exempt income of their employees. You give exemption, we also give exemption. That is called diplomatic immunity. But the most important, and this was the confusion, most important criteria is that India will give this exemption which we are giving here to Mr. Harry. Sujoy will not get any exemption because country B is not giving any exemption. So Sujoy has to always pay tax. But Mr. Harry will get only if he is not an Indian citizen. And in this question, once you are an Indian citizen, then in that case, you have to pay tax. Once you are an Indian citizen, it is going to be taxable. When is the exemption going to be available, sir? Sir, when you are not citizen, and that, what are the two conditions? You are not a citizen. You are working for an embassy here, and if full year you are here, that means you have to be resident. But you are not a citizen and that country is giving exemption to our employees. So this country is not giving exemption. For him, it is always going to be taxable. For Sujoy, story is over. If we talk about Harry, that country is giving exemption. So we will give you exemption, but only if you are not citizen. If you are citizen, it is going to be taxable. So in case 1, they are both citizens and therefore it will be taxable for both. And in case 2, Mr. Harry and Sujoy are not Indian citizen. If they are not citizen, then the exemption will be available, but only to Mr. Harry because country B is taking tax from Indians. Then Mr. Sujoy will not get exemption. So remuneration of Mr. Harry will be exempt, but Mr. Sujoy will be taxable. So if they are citizens, then both will pay tax. If they are not citizen, then exemption will be given, but only to that assessee where that country gives exemption to our people. Excellent. Music Academy, as per its rule, pays fixed honorarium per concert to each musician performing in the concert organized by it. Hari, a violinist, however, refuses to accept this sum. He requests Music Academy to pay such sum directly to aid US and unregistered institution providing relief to the poor and needy in rural India. What would be the tax consequence? So I perform, I get payment, and I said, don't give me, give it to that trust. Listen. That means I have already received it and I am handing it over to the trust. When can you tell anybody to? आप कब बोल सकते हो ना आपके जेब में कुछ पैसा होएगा तो मैं आपको बोलूंगा क्या किसी को भी दे दो और आप मेरी बात सुनोगे? Only when that money belongs to me. So as a violinist, मुझे I have earned that money, मुझे वो पैसा कमाई हो गया और मेरी कमाई हुई पैसे को मैं आपको बोल रहा हूं कि give it to that trust. That means I have earned. भले I tell you that you give directly. I am telling you give directly, but it is like I receive from you and I am giving. So first, it is my income received from Music Academy, and then I have given it to that unregistered trust because it is unregistered. That will also pay tax. So I have earned, I will also pay tax, and I have given it to the trust. It will also pay tax. It is like I receive and I give it, and thus it is going to be chargeable to tax both in the hands of Mr. Hari as well as the trust. Mr. Arjun, this is that sum where you come to know the real beauty. To be very honest, this is the first chapter. The questions are not so difficult. So the real difficult sums will start from the next chapter onwards. But to just give you a hint of what you are going to see in my MCQ book, actual book, you will see from the second episode onwards what is my book and how is it different from others. This question 48 will make a lot of things clear. Mr. Arjun, age 40 years, age is relevant. Total income comprises of long-term capital gain on sale of land 5 lakh rupees, that means 20% tax 112. Short-term capital gain on sale of STT paid listed equity shares 2 lakh rupees, so that will be 15% under 111. Income from lottery 1 lakh, that will be 30% under section 115BB. And saving bank interest 30,000 will be taxable at normal rate of tax. He is investing 1,50,000 in PPF and claims the tax benefit. Benefit का spelling wrong है, वो आप benefit का spelling लिख लेना बराबर से. Claims the tax benefit under section 80C. What is his? Open your eyes. What is his tax liability? Is what they are asking you. Tax liability. To find out tax, you have to first compute income, and the main purpose behind these MCQ lectures is this. Question number 48. First step is going to be computation of income. I believe that you already have the hard copy of the book and therefore you can see what have I written. First, NTTI, no salary, house, property, PGBP, only capital gain and IFOS. In capital gain, if you observe, assessee has got long-term capital gain on land 5 lakh rupees and 111 2 lakh rupees. The total amounts to 7 lakh, and in IFOS lottery of 1 lakh, only 4 incomes are given and we have written all of them, which makes the gross total income of 8 lakh 30. And then question is clearly saying he is taking benefit. One more thing you should understand, when the question is saying he is taking benefit, it means that this assessee has chosen to remain in the old taxation regime because he wants the benefit of chapter 6A, and thus we will give chapter 6A. And any student who has studied from me in classroom coaching, especially the full course lecture, knows this one principle. Under all circumstances, we will always write this, because this will make a lot of things clear. Once we write maximum how much, normally we get deductions to the extent of our gross total income. However, if our GTI contains any income which is taxable at a special rate, then from that we will not get deduction. And if you observe carefully, three of them are taxable at special rate. So the only income eligible for deduction is going to be 30,000 rupees. If you don't make this mistake, or if you don't write this and you make a mistake and you apply slabs on 8 lakh, you have lost the battle then and there. I hope you understand what is happening here. You lose it altogether. So maximum deductions are going to be 30,000 rupees, and which is why even those students who take crash course, we give our question answer recording which is separately available, and we always recommend that it is better that along with the crash course you see the question answers. Ultimately solving subjective sums and getting marks is important. And what kind of sums we have? See, observe carefully. Now when we are going to give deduction of 30,000 maximum, first of all it should also click to you that this is saving account interest. So 10,000 will go away, and if 10,000 is going away, then whatever be my contribution in 80C, the maximum that I will get is 20. Accordingly 30 will become your deduction. So this income altogether goes away, and this 8 lakh which is remaining in your NTTI is nothing but these 3 incomes. That is going to be your NTTI. Are you following? And now we have to calculate tax on NTTI. I will not scroll up. Observe carefully at the bottom. NTTI now comprises of 5 lakh. Because if I scroll up, then the fun will go away. 5 lakh LTCG, 2 lakh 111 है, 1 lakh casual winnings. Let's calculate tax. Casual winning 30%. 2 lakh will be 15%. So that's 30,000, 30,000, 60,000. And LTCG 5 lakh into 20%. That will give you 1 lakh. Total of 160. Plus if you add 4%, 166, 400 I think you will get, which is also one of the option. Disaster, disaster, disaster. Tiding, tiding, tiding. Tiding, tiding. Tiding, tiding. Resident individual and resident HUF are allowed to utilize their unexhausted basic exemption limit. Are allowed to utilize what? Unexhausted basic exemption limit. 2 people against 3 incomes. 111A, 112, 112A. 112A is not there. 111A and 112 are there. Between them, obviously, 112 falls in higher rate of tax, and thus we will adjust our unexhausted basic exemption limit, and only 250 will be taxable at 20%. So 50,000 plus 3080 plus 30, 1 lakh, 10,000 I think this is, and when you add your 4% cess, and when you add on 1 lakh 10,000, when you add your 4% cess, that is when you will get this. So if you don't give unexhausted basic exemption limit, you will get this as your answer, which is wrong. I will take you to the full solution once again. Anybody wanting any screenshot or something, so all we will do is we will give you a better view of the sum so that you can take a proper screenshot. This will help you with the solution. And by the way, you are watching this MCQ lecture only to get this. At least some of you all are watching. Some want to see my handsome face also. I'll show you my face again, don't worry. This was your Arey jana yaar. Question. This was your NTTI. And this is your tax calculation. I hope you have taken the screenshot of the same. Excellent. Let's go. And otherwise you can pause the video and take it also. Thank you very much. Question number 49. In case of an, and by the way, 48 has given you a hint of how our book is different from anybody else. I say it with a lot of pride. Best MCQ book currently available in the market, and same thing will happen for the upcoming handwritten book. It will you know, it will be the best thing possible in the subject of CA, direct tax, best thing that is going to be possible. And the results of our student, highest number of exemptions, more than anybody else, are already proving that. Okay. In case of an individual having NTTI of exact 2 crore, so more than 1 crore, but up to exact 2 crore, it is going to be 15%. It will become 37 only when it is more than, 2 crore. And once again, it does not make any difference. If you are a non-resident, still it is going to be 15%. And if it is a senior citizen, still it is going to be 15. If the above example individual has opted for the new regime and NTTI is 2 crore as per calculation of new regime, after foregoing your deduction, does not make any difference. The rate of surcharge is still going to be 15%. In case of an individual having NTTI of exact 5 crore, then it is going to be 25. When it is greater than 5 crore, then it will become 37. So it is going to be 25. And once again, whether you are non-resident or senior citizen, always remember residential status and being a senior citizen is irrelevant when it comes to higher, or when it comes to being a non-resident or being a senior citizen is irrelevant when it comes to application of the rate of surcharge. All that is irrelevant. Okay. Even the above example, he has opted for new regime and 5 crore is as per the calculation of 115 BSE. Still it does not make any difference. It is still going to be 25. When it is exceeding 5 crore rupees, at that time it is going to be 37. Now we know whether you are a non-resident or whether you are a senior citizen. In all cases, it is going to be 37, and 5 crore exceeding with new regime also it is going to be 37. 25% and 37% surcharge are not applicable when, if your income is exceeding 2 crore rupees only because of 111A, 112A, capital gain of FII, or as per an amendment dividend income which was exempt last year but has now become taxable. If your income is crossing 2 crore only because of these incomes, then everything will be in 15% surcharge. And if it is already crossed, then also on these incomes, it will be always 15%. On the tax that you calculate on these incomes, it will be 15. And only on your other income, we will apply 25 and 37. And accordingly, all of the above not applicable. New taxation regime under 115 BAC is available to resident individual HUF, non-resident individual HUF. Only 115 BAC is the problematic section, to be very honest. In case of the other provisions, BAA, BAB, they have said domestic company. BAD, they have said resident cooperative society. But here it will be both of them. BAD, just now discussed, it is going to be available to resident cooperative society. Which of the following tax benefits is not available if the assessee opts for new taxation regime under section 115 BAC? 20 tax benefits to be foregone. Go watch our revision and amendment lecture. Even now, if you have not watched, it is still better and it is still time that you can go and watch. SEZ deduction will not be available. Specified business 3580 not available. Additional depreciation for manufacturer also not available. So all of the above. Which of the following tax benefits is available? SOP deduction you won't get, but in LOP, because you are showing income, so LOP deduction will be available, but SOP deduction is not going to be available. State whether true or false. AMT is not applicable for assessees in new taxation regime. Yes, MAT was not applicable in new regime for companies, and here AMT is not applicable. So if we say not applicable, it is true. If we remove the word not and ask applicable, then the answer will be false. You have to be very careful about what is the question and accordingly what is the answer. Assessees not having PGBP can change the option of old regime or new regime every year. Just add in the question. The question is on 115 BAC. Just add in the question. Assessees not having PGBP option under 115 BAC, can they change every year? Yes, people not having PGBP will be allowed to change old regime or new regime every year. Not having PGBP, you are allowed. But if you have PGBP, again, the question is based on 115 BAC. If you have PGBP, then you cannot change every year. Then what is the rule? You can take new, you can come back to old, but then you cannot go back to new. But if you stop doing business, then you can change every year, like you will fall in the case covered under question number 67. So no PGBP, change every year. Yes, PGBP, go to new, allowed. Come back to old, allowed. But again, going to new, not allowed, except if you stop doing your business. Surcharge under new taxation regime under section 115 BAC shall be under 115 BAC for individual HUF. It is same as the old regime, but NTTI has to be calculated as per new regime by foregoing those deductions. And lastly, surcharge under new taxation regime under 115 BAD for cooperative society. For cooperative society, what is the system? Same as companies, like we had in 115 BAA and BAB. Always at a rate of fixed 10%, irrespective of income. So in old regime, cooperative society has surcharge only when income exceeds 1 crore at 12%, like partnership firm. Only one rate, 12% permanent. But in new regime, it is like new regime of companies, always applicable at 10% for. And surcharge is one area where even the brightest students go wrong. So surcharge in new regime for cooperative society will be flat rate of 10%. Well then, ladies and gentlemen, that was our first chapter, that is our chapter called Introduction. So students, in the very first lecture, we have completed 70 questions, but we have still not finished. Our target is going to be at least to cross 1 hour every day. So sometimes in big chapters, it can go to 1.5 hours also. So I think I should not be ending the episode, and therefore I wish to immediately take you to, I think there are less questions, and therefore we will also be able to finish this chapter number 2, DTAA. We have got about 16 questions in the chapter DTAA, and every word that we are learning here is going to be applicable for the portion of paper 6C. Also, this chapter is applicable in both papers, and secondly, it's a chapter of international tax, so a very important chapter. Let us see. And I am not explaining anything in the chapter, directly the questions. As I already told you, it is necessary that you watch the revision cum amendment lecture. They have been recorded for a purpose, and the purpose has to be achieved. Okay. Tax can be levied on an assessee due to residence, source, both, no? Home country, residence, host country, source. X is a resident of India and earn income in New Zealand and pay tax in both countries, India home country, New Zealand host country, same person, same income getting taxed twice. Juridical double taxation. When is it economic? When it is different people than economic. Ex a resident of Germany earned dividend income from a domestic company in India, which is now taxable. So till last year, what was happening? In India, company was paying DDT, and in his country, he was paying, being a resident over there. So last year it was two different people, and therefore it was economic double taxation. If you check last year's book, and this is the difference. So even if the question is same, the answer has changed, and which is why this season of MCQ has a lot of difference compared to last season, and that will happen now once in a year based on again the response. So upcoming episodes will be uploaded, let me be clear, on the basis of response to the first episode. I don't want to waste time unnecessarily if students are not interested. Simple. So now you observe the difference here. Now in India also X will pay tax due to source and no DDT, therefore taxable, and his country also he will pay tax, and consequently this which was till last year economic double taxation will now become juridical. Bilateral relief is available. In fact, any kind of relief is available only for juridical. Under economic double taxation there is no relief. Unilateral relief, when there is no DTAA, then unilateral relief, main and most important condition is unilateral relief will be available only to resident. A non-resident loses what? Unilateral relief, already we saw previous question, section 91. Unexhausted basic exemption limit is available only to resident individual, resident HUF. So not allowed. Higher basic exemption of senior citizen also not allowed, accordingly loses all of them. Condition for unilateral relief, what are the conditions? Resident, most important. Income outside India, tax outside India, and no DTAA. So resident, tax in foreign country, no DTAA. That is all of the above. In order to claim relief under tax treaty in India, a non-resident should have what? Is it necessary that you have business presence? No. PAN is also not compulsory. Return filed of that country is not compulsory, but it is compulsory to prove that you have become a resident over there. If you are non-resident here, दैट मीन्स ओवर देयर, मतलब आप यहाँ पे नॉन रेसिडेंट हो तो उधर रेसिडेंट हो, उधर अगर तुम रेसिडेंट हो तो उस गवर्नमेंट से लिखवा के लेके आओ दिस पर्सन हैज बिकम अ रेसिडेंट ओवर हियर, उसको लिख के देना पड़ेगा, एंड ओनली देन व्हेन यू हैव योर टीआरसी टैक्स रेसिडेंसी सर्टिफिकेट इट इज गोइंग टू बी अलाउड. Question 9 will actually show you what my MCQ can do and how it can change your life. Okay, this is the toughest thing. Let's see. Samrat, resident in India, has earned income of 4 lakh by way of lump sum consideration for copyright of a book from a publisher in country. So that is basically royalty that he has received, 4 lakh rupees. Do we know something about royalty income? ATQQB deduction. Excellent. With which India does not have a DTAA. No problem. If India does not have a DTAA, no problem. You are a resident and therefore eligible for unilateral relief. The same has been taxed at a flat rate of 15%. That means that foreign country E has taken tax of 15%, but there is no DTAA. And in India, his gross total income is 12 lakh rupees. He has not opted for 115 BAC. If he has not opted for 115 BAC, that means he will pay tax as per old regime, and being age is not mentioned, so you have to give 250 basic exemption, and you have to give your 80 QQB deduction of royalty also. What is the double taxation relief? Listen, question is about relief. When we calculate this will be unilateral because there is no DTAA. Assessee is resident, unilateral. There are steps. Step 1 is NTTI. Step 2 is tax in India without relief. Average rate of tax. Foreign rate already given 15. Compare Indian tax or foreign rate, whichever is lower. Indian average rate or foreign rate, whichever is lower, and doubly tax income included in NTTI into the lower rate will become your relief. That's your step 6. That is what they are asking. You have to solve this full sum. Very first step, calculation of NTTI, and biggest disaster is that students go wrong over there only. First step itself is wrong, and the mistake that you will make are actually the wrong options that I have given. If you open your eyes and read carefully, they have given you, my dear students, GTI. This 12 lakh is GTI. When I say 12 lakh is GTI, that means this 4 lakh is already included. Because this is GTI. GTI includes total of all incomes. So the first mistake that you will make is, if you think that 12 lakh is other income and we have to add, supposingly they change this and write Indian income is 12 lakh. Then you have to add 4 lakh and make GTI 16, then give deductions. But if you read carefully, the question is saying, this is GTI, that means this is already included. So any student adding 4 lakh, you are wrong from your own. Second, if you assume this is net income and directly calculate tax, again wrong. The only correct calculation is, Gross total income is 10 lakh rupees. This is your question number 9. Gross total income is 12 lakh rupees, and from that 80 QQB 3 lakh. So if you take 12 as NTTI, then you are wrong, or if you add 4 lakh, then you are wrong. If you carefully observe the word use, GTI means 4 is included. Foreign income is included, but chapter 6 is not given. So we will give, and we will give because he is in old regime. So step 1, NTTI 12 minus 3, 9 lakh. Let's calculate tax in India. Old regime. So first 250 0 up to 5 lakh, 5%. So 12,500 and 4 lakh into 20%, that is 80,000. Basic tax 92. 500 more than 5 lakhs, so no rebate, and less than 50 lakh, no surcharge, add HEC. 96,200 will be your Indian tax if you don't get any relief, for which you get the average rate as 10.69%. Foreign rate is 15, and thus the lower of the two will be 10.69. And finally, that you get the rate at which you will be eligible for relief, all you are required to do is what? Apply the lower rate on what? Listen, now you apply on 4 lakh, then also you are going to be wrong. If you have already calculated the income over here, wrong by taking 16 lakh or by calculating tax on 12 lakh, you are already wrong. 4 lakh is your income, but from that in India you have taken 3 lakh deduction, and thus the amount included in NTTI is only and only rupees 1 lakh. Doubly taxed income included in NTTI is only 1 lakh, and the rate of 10.69 will accordingly make it 10,690, which is the only correct answer. Welcome to MCQ Season 2. Question number 10. Where a person resident in India derives income from a nation with which India does not have a DTAA, such person is given credit in the following. No DTAA means how do you get? Unilateral. And what's the logic of unilateral? Indian rate or foreign rate, whichever is lower. Entire tax paid in foreign country? No. If it is lower in India, then only whichever is lower. Tax paid in foreign country on income which is doubly taxed? No. No. Not the tax over there. The tax whichever is lower. Tax paid on income which is doubly taxed is allowed as deduction at the Indian rate. No. Tax on income which is doubly taxed is allowed as a deduction at the Indian rate or foreign rate, whichever is Indian rate or foreign rate, whichever is lower. ABC Limited, an Indian company, has transfer pricing addition of 10 crore in its income. However, such addition is not available as a deduction to the associated enterprise, and thus both assessees have to pay tax. Both assessees have to pay tax. So, in India, because it is addition, and that company, because it will not be allowed. We know in transfer pricing, when income of one enterprise increases, the other enterprise does not get the deduction, and therefore same income is getting taxed twice, but in the hands of different people. And when the same income is getting taxed in the hands of different people, then it becomes a case of economic double taxation, for which obviously we know no relief is given. Which of the following is a method of providing bilateral? How can bilateral be provided? We have tax credit, tax exemption. So both methods are going to be allowed. In case of contradiction between Act and DTAA, if there is ever any conflict, DTAA being a specific provision will override the Act. But if the Act is found beneficial, then we can take it, and consequently can I say Act or DTAA? Whichever is beneficial to the assessee. Share of profit from an Indian firm is exempt in the hands of partner because obviously firm has paid tax. Can such income be taxed in accordance with the provision of treaty? So as per Act it is exempt. Can the treaty take tax? Listen, Act or treaty, whichever is beneficial, and therefore treaty also cannot take tax. Which of the following statement reflects the, observe carefully, incorrect you have to choose. Which statement is wrong? Domestic laws are irrelevant while applying the provisions of DTAA. Of course they are relevant. We have just been studying last 3-4 questions. What is the rule? Hello. What is the rule? That the tax that you pay is going to be whichever is beneficial, and therefore even when we are going for DTAA, we will do focus on the domestic law as well. So I think the very first point is the correct answer, but before we conclude, let's read because they are big point. Income Tax Act empower union government to enter into treaties. That is correct. Anyways, we have to choose incorrect. So B is not the answer. DTAA overrides provisions of domestic law unless it is beneficial. Yes. So whichever is beneficial, correct provision. So wrong answer, because correct answer is incorrect provision. We have to choose incorrect. So we have chosen A already, but we are just reading. In absence of DTAA, domestic tax law provide unilateral relief to, yes, only to resident, but they do provide. That means B, C, D correct. and we have to choose incorrect. A is the only answer then in that case. Any term used in DTAA with a foreign country has not been defined. It is not defined in the agreement also and act also. See, sometimes agreement will define. If agreement does not define, we can take definition from domestic law. But if both have not defined and later government issues a notification, then it shall be applicable from which date? So we do agreement today, whatever be the date today. And after 1 year we define, because it is not defined in the agreement as well as the act. Then when will that definition come into force? Obviously, if we have to apply the agreement from today, then the definition also has to come into force from today, and consequently from the date when the DTAA came into force. So on 1st April, let's assume dates. On 1st April, if we do a DTAA. In October, if we define a term, but we have to apply it in the DTAA which is in force from 1st April, and therefore it will be from the 1st of April, from the date when the DTAA came into force. So that was your second chapter. Target is going to be at least to cover 100. First lecture we are not able to cover 100 questions, we know, because we have introduction also, but 70 plus 16, 86 questions in the very first episode is also an achievement. So stay tuned, dear students. More and more is going to come up for you on the channel, but provided you watch these lectures. So if I am doing hard work, I want you to watch it. If a good number of students watching, other episodes coming up very soon for you. Till then, have a good time, my dear students. See you again for a next episode, for our next episode. Thank you very much. All the best.